Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. In every general election, the battle for Malay Muslim votes are undoubtedly the fiercest. This fight has traditionally been between UMNO and PAS, but recent political realignments mean that there are now three major coalitions with credible Malay representation, not to mention a number of new Malay-based parties entering the fray, all of them vying for the Malay vote. Now, with straight fights likely a rarity in GA15, what would a split in the Malay vote mean for the outcome of the elections? Joining me now is Razak Rizwan. He is Deputy Youth Chief for AMANA. Razak, when we often talk about ethnic groups, we talk about them like they're homogenous, like they're just one big chunk, the same type. But when we're discussing the Malay Muslim vote, do we need to take into account the historical context, the distinctions between class, between location, between gender even?
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for having me tonight. Yes, that's very important for us to start with the historical context of the Malay political dynamics. Because for those who are lazy in their analysis and they jump to conclusion with a simplistic conclusion, saying that the Malay segment, the Malay voter segment is very homogeneous. For me, that is one of the biggest mistake one can do. And for that reason, it's very important for us to start tonight with the historical background of the Malay political dynamics and why the question of race and religion is the central question of Malay politics. Number one, if you look at even pre-independence, pre-Merdeka, and this trend is consistent up until now, 2022. The question of religion, and number two, the question of race is at the core of Malay politics. That's why the Malay-based and Islam-based party will forever be relevant. For example, the question when we talk about the religion issue, the question of state and religion relations, and when we talk about the race, the question of meritocracy, and of course the social justice and economic equality, all intertwined and rooted in racial issues. These are two issues that we would never have consensus on. And for as long as we don't have consensus on these two issues, we would always have different strain of Malay and Islamic political party. That's number one. Number two, what happened in 1999 when reformasi happened 1 year before and keadilan or adil back then was established, it disrupt the whole Malay political landscape. Before this, yes, they are multiracial party in as early as pre-independent Parti Negara by Datuk On, and of course Gerakan in the 60s and 70s, right? But they are, I think it is a consensus among the political analysts, a failure. But Keadilan is the first and only multiracial party that has proven to be a success. That's number one. Number two, AMANA, 2015. Yes, we are an Islamic party, but we have a different version of Islam to offer to the Malaysian. PAS has always been the one and only established Islamic party in Malaysia. And their version of Islam is a conservative one. And AMANA came into the picture in 2015, 7 years ago, offering the Malaysia a different variation of Islamism. And these two occurrences in Malay political landscape, I think, disrupt the whole narrative of Malay politics.
Is it still
so I think I start with that one.
Right, but Raza, is it still disrupted? I'm wondering, because if you say that there is always going to be a place for race-based and religion-based political parties, is that where the Malay vote will remain? In the hands of those who maintain the discourse, the ethnocentric, ethno-chauvinist discourse of Malay rights, Islamic superiority, and also the superiority of the royal houses? are those the issues that will always dominate and supersede multi-ethnic policy and discourse?
Okay, back to my previous statement about we must not generalize, making a sweeping statement about Malay politics, about the Malay constituencies. They are not homogeneous. That's number one, we must bear in our mind. Number two, yes, predominantly throughout history, Malay are conservative, whether in the issues of race and moreover in the issues of religion. That is for me a fact. Um, at the same time, with the passing of time and the changing of the reality, especially when we consider the globalization, the democratization of information and everything, the Malay are not the same Malay as before. For example, why Keadilan has been successful despite being a multiracial party? And why Amanah? Of course, we as a party might be not so strong, but within Pakatan Harapan, we are one of the three core parties plus APCO that makes 2018 triumph possible. And that is very important because when, for example, the rural, yeah, the rural and Malay, the rural and urban divide of the Malay, I think it is overrated because we are making simplistic division between rural and urban. Yes, as I said just now, the globalization and the democratization of information has changed the landscape. At the same time, we must also acknowledge the effect of post-truth, where no longer information and objective truth be the basis of people making their political decision, but on emotion and perception.
Okay.
So we must clearly define not only the yes.
I take your point to the fact that, you know, the Malay vote is not monolithic. It's not a monolith. There are multiple dimensions. But you mentioned Amanah is a party that champions Islamic modernism, progressive Islam. Who are you trying to attract to Pakatan Harapan? Have you, as Amanah, done enough to attract the Malay Muslim vote that is split multi-way to attract that vote to the coalition?
I think I must be honest here. Maybe my answer is not politically correct, especially we are on the age of GE15. But to be perfectly honest, if you look at back in 2018, we can never win without DAP and Keadilan. And we will certainly won't win without Bersatu. But without Amanah, I can say for a fact that Pakatan Rakyat would still win. That reflects our own weaknesses as a party. But I must say this with conviction, after Bersatu kicked themselves out of Pakatan Harapan, Amanah is the only Malay and Islam-based party remaining in Pakatan Harapan. Yes, we have all the weaknesses that we acknowledge, but at the same time, taking into consideration, it is impossible for us to form a political coalition with any Malay-based party at this juncture. Amanah must step forward to fill that vacuum. That's why I always talk about how Amanah has to reinvent itself from just splinter party to PAS, trying to unsuccessfully so far to regain some of the PAS voters. We must reinvent ourselves to be more appealing, not only to the urban Malay, but also to the rural Malay.
Raza, is there anything that differentiates all the Malay-based political parties out there, from UMNO to PAS to Amanah to Pejuang to Bersatu to Iman to Putra? I've lost track of them all, but what differentiates all of them besides the fact that they champion race and religion?
Number one, we have to differentiate between the religion-based and the race-based. Amanah and PAS is the religion-based, Islam-based party. And the other category is the Malay-based party that includes, of course, the longest and the oldest one, UMNO, Bersatu, Putra, and everyone. number one, about the Islam-based, what's the difference between amanah and PAS? Um, a short and concise answer would be amanah is the evolution, not only merely a splinter party of PAS, but the evolution of Islamism that is refused to happen within PAS. And we no longer focus on the Sharia per se, but on the values. We no longer think ourselves as the messenger and representation of God, but we are only one of the player in the democracy. We appreciate plurality, we reject exclusivism in contradiction to past, and that is for me a very fundamental difference between amanah and past. That's number one. Number two, when we come to the race-based party between UMNO, Bersatu, and this is why I mentioned earlier in our discussion how Keadilan established 1999, Amanah 2015 is two cornerstones in Malay politics. But I didn't mention Bersatu, and I did that on purpose because Bersatu has no different whatsoever with UMNO except for the seemingly opposition and rejection of corruption. But I would argue even Bersatu is not that clean either. Yeah, if we go into what happened post Sheraton move, Muhyiddin and Bersatu, when they want to form the government with Muhyiddin as the prime minister, what do they offer to UMNO and PAS leadership? The position in the ministerial position and GLCs. What is that if not corruption, right? So what's the difference between them and UMNO? I would say no, no difference.
Okay, Raza, unfortunately we've run out of time, and I do want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Raza Rizwan, Deputy Youth Chief for Amanah. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. Let's continue our look at the battle for the quote-unquote Malay vote for in GE15. My next guest is Dr. Rais Hussein. He's the president of Emir Research, a co-founder of Bersatu. Rais has recently officially joined PKR. Rais, thanks for joining me today. You have left Bersatu, a party that put front and center its championing of Ketuanan Melayu. And now you've joined PKR, which is a party that tries to espouse a multi-ethnic framework. Is this you betting on Malays being ready to vote across racial lines?
I think the move from Bersatu to PKR may be just a movement of platform, or they said in Arabic, manhaj, the method. I think the maqasid, the aims remains the same. I think I've always stood for 5 core principles: the reforms, justice, inclusiveness, progressive, and more importantly, wasatiyah or moderation. These 5 core principles that led me to work very hard beginning 2015 to co-establish. I will not use the word co-found because some people have some issues with that. That's fine. So co-establish the party called Bersatu. I put my life and my efforts in that because I believe at that point of time there is a mechanism that's required to defeat the kleptocrats as they were. And that worked. The formula worked. So we needed about 23 to 26% vote swings among the Malay votes to be able to win the GE14. And holistically, it provided that required percentages, including in the non-Malay majority area. So it worked. Now, if somebody asks me why PKR, precisely the 5 reasons that I said, the core principles, and obviously PKR embodied that. I strongly believe it has come to a time that Malaysia and Malaysians must move out of this draconian identity politics of race and religion and to a more united and unified front to consider as Malaysian first, Malaysian second, Malaysian last. In that way, we will be even more progressive, we will be prosperous, and we will not waste time about looking at our differences. Rather, we will be looking at the way to help each other to be amongst the nations that have done well. If you look at the nations that have done well, they've gone out of this identity politics.
Well, so are you saying that Malaysians in GE15 are ready to vote across racial lines? That the parties of UMNO and PAS and Pejuang and Bersatu, all and all kinds of permutations of coalitions among them, trying to espouse ummah unity. I mean, does that not speak to the fact that politicians are still playing the race card?
Um, True, in an ideal world, when you talk about ummah unity based on what? Is it based on race? Is it based on religion? Is it based on parochial politics? Is it based on narrow parochial politics? We need to be very clear. In the Quran, the concept of ummatan wahida, one ummah, is based on amar maruf nahi munkar, do the good things and avoid evil things. And this is clearly provided in the Quran. Yeah? I'm not quoting right, it's the Quran. And secondly, and more importantly, Islam abhors racism. Islam abhors racism at all costs, at all levels. And the fact that every party exists, Pejuang exists, Bersatu exists, UMNO exists, PAS exists, it is nothing wrong with the focus. But when the focus overwhelmingly overrides the greater unity and a greater, in Arabic they say maqasid Sharia, the higher objectives of Sharia, then that's a problem. Then you will start using religion and race to justify anything. You can steal money, you can be convicted, and still you'll be hero worshipped, and you want him to be able to attend parliament, and for God's sake, even to stand in election in the next using the laws. So I think it is high time everyone start thinking that look, wait a second, let us focus on the importance of Malaysia as a country as a whole for everyone, for the many, not for the few. If you look at NEP, New Economic Policy, I advocated, supported that. Why? Because when you look at the objectives of New Economic Policy is to remove racial identification with economic function and to provide assistance and facilitation those who need it. With obviously, if you look at the majority of those who are in that bracket are the Malays, the Bumiputras. Is nothing wrong. But who benefited from that? It is not the many. It is the very, very few who, MA Research is doing some recalibrating even the equation of T20, M40, and B40 to B70, and then M15 and T5. So things are being changed. We had that shocking pandemic that came to us. No one in the world, I mean, we cannot blame anyone. No one in the world was ready for the pandemic and the way it was managed. Then we have a global stagflation, stagnation
Right.
in growth and inflation. So it's a triple whammy that came to us. And at this point of time, we really do not need this identity politics, which has a positive correlation to corruption, which has become a way of life in Malaysia. It is really high time we have to do away with this identity politics of race and religion in a parochial sense. But if there is a party that represents a common interest of a particular group, that is perfectly all right.
Okay. All right. I do want to talk a little bit about this. The many parties that will probably use this platform in GE15 to push forward identity politics, the message of identity politics, and I do wonder whether that would mean in the fact that straight fights will likely be a rarity, so we'll have a lot of multi-corner fights in this general elections. What would a split in the Malay vote mean for the outcome? Who benefits from a split Malay vote? Who loses out from a split vote?
Political dynamics is so fluid in Malaysia that what I spoke the last 1 second might be irrelevant the next second. Because you'll see people forming alliances, see people forming pacts under whatever pretext. Some will say Ummah, some will say unity of the Ummah, some will say we need to save our bangsa, and all kind of things. But when they say agama, bangsa dan negara, I only can hear kita, keluarga kita, kroni kita. This is the problem that we are facing. It has been so abused that people could not differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. It becomes so arbitrary, and this is the problem. So yes, we have these parties getting together. There are announcements after announcements. Some say closed doors, some says open doors, some says invisible door, some says yes, the door is open again, some says door is closed, and all that. Albeit all this, amidst all this, we must always think who is suffering. And today, I just give you some statistics. You have 1.2 million underemployed. 1.2 million underemployed. Maknanya, you have an economics degree, but you're washing car or you're riding Grab. You have 612,000 unemployed. Boss, this is 1.812 million who is badly affected by the whole thing. Are we not supposed to focus on these 5 main things, which is cost of living, affordable and quality healthcare, affordable and quality education, affordable quality homes, and quality employment? These are the 5 things which I always call it as tummy economy that is critical for human survival. So
Right.
amidst all this, angling and narrative building and all that, my only question would be, what are we doing in these 5 fronts, which is again coming back, Melissa, to the Maqasid Sharia, the protection of dignity, the protection of life, those kind of things. So again, if really the Malay parties and Muslim party that talks about Islam, in this case, obviously, I'm referring to the merchant trader of Islam, PAS, they really focus on these 5 elements, they will not have time for all this, nonsense. They need to
Right.
really focus on what is required by the people. Then again, you have some other parties who come and say, reform, justice, these are all concepts, right? Good. That will be the long term, medium term to long term. What is the need of the people today? People need decent jobs. People need decent pays. Are we paying properly?
Okay. In the just the short time that we have left, right, is we always see during campaign periods the racial card, the racial sentiment, the religious sentiment being amped up. Are you going to call out instances of this identity politics that you've said if we see it come up in the campaign period?
When we did 25 years research on this identity politics, we have established beyond the shadow of doubt there is a positive correlation between identity politics of race and religion and corruption. And this data is available even for Malaysia. If you talk about corruption, goodness gracious, the amount of money that Malaysia has lost. Imagine if we have those money today. Some estimates 3 trillion ringgit on the high side and 1.8 trillion ringgit on the low side. I'm quoting from data that are available for 25 years. Either you take the AG, Auditor General data at 2% of the GDP, or the Transparency International 4% of GDP, and another study made by a foreign university at 47% corruption and leakages. We have to stop this. We want the fruits, the benefits of the country to be shared by everyone. I honestly feel if you find any candidates who comes to you and talk about the superiority of race, the superiority of one being against the other, then you must instantaneously consign him never to go to the parliament or the state assembly. You must vote for people who have the right skill, right knowledge, right abilities, with the right integrity, because integrity overcomes everything and overwhelms everything. You can
Right.
have some Harvard graduate who's still defending the kleptocrats. This is nonsense. I'm sorry I've used the word nonsense twice today, because I'm just
Okay.
exhausted and tired of all this thing that is harming who. The question is harming who? You think the politician? No, they will have a jolly good time when time comes. End of the
Right.
year, they will be in London at the Bicester Square or Bicester whatever shopping. But the people who do not have work, who work
Right.
2 works, 3 works, and then they always say Malay is lazy. That's not true. I've known a lot of my friends who have multiple jobs just to make ends meet. So I
Right.
think
It's
it is
unfortunately we've run out of
time.
time.
Yeah, just one more thing. It is time to end this identity politics of race. I'm talking about the parochial ones. I'm not talking about the focused. I'm talking about the parochial ones. Let us move and embark on the journey as a complete Malaysian for the many.
All right, Dr. Rais Hussein, President of Memilih Research, they're wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.